The first thing Marcus Chen felt was cold. Not the clean cold of space or the sterile cold of a medical bay, but something alive and wrong. It wrapped around his wrists and ankles like living metal, pulsing with a dim blue light that hurt to look at. His eyes opened slowly. The ceiling above him moved. No, it breathed. The walls of whatever room held him were made of something that looked like black glass mixed with organic tissue. Veins of purple light ran through them, like blood vessels and skin held up to a lamp. Marcus tried to move. The chains tightened instantly, biting into his skin. He stopped struggling, and they loosened again, just enough to let blood flow. They were reading him somehow, responding to his body. "Where am I?" His voice came out rough and dry. Memory returned in pieces. He had been on his salvage ship, the Broken Promise, investigating a distress beacon near the Kepler Expanse. Old habit from his military days. Never ignore a distress call. Then there had been light. So much light that it burned through the hull. His ship had died around him. All systems gone dark in an instant. Then, nothing. The room suddenly filled with presence. Marcus felt it before he saw anything. A pressure in his mind, like someone pressing fingers against his temples from the inside. His head snapped toward the doorway. She entered like a queen entering a throne room, which Marcus supposed she was. The alien stood nearly 8 feet tall. Her body was covered in plates of deep purple armor that looked grown rather than worn, smooth and fitted perfectly to a form that was almost humanoid, but not quite. Her limbs were too long, jointed in one extra place. Her hands ended in 4 fingers, each tipped with something that could have been a claw or a carefully manicured nail. But it was her face that held Marcus frozen. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like a sculpture of something predatory. Large eyes, completely black except for rings of gold around the pupils. High cheekbones that could have been carved from stone. A mouth that seemed almost human until she tilted her head, and the lighting showed too many teeth, all of them sharp. She moved around him in a slow circle, studying him the way a collector might study a new acquisition. Marcus forced himself to meet her gaze, even though every instinct screamed at him to look away. Then she spoke, but her mouth did not move. The words formed directly in his mind, each one feeling like a drop of cold water falling into his thoughts. "You are mine." Marcus jerked against the chains. "Like hell I am." She stopped moving, her head tilting slightly. There was curiosity in those alien eyes now. She reached out one long-fingered hand and touched his forehead. The touch burned cold, and Marcus's mind exploded with images. He saw fleets of ships, each one the size of a city, moving through space like schools of fish. He saw worlds burning, their atmospheres peeled away by weapons he could not understand. He saw species after species kneeling before thrones made of bone and crystal. He saw libraries of genetic material, stored in towers that reached into artificial skies. 47 civilizations, all conquered, all catalogued, all absorbed into an empire that spanned 3 galaxies. The Velkari Empire. And this creature standing before him was Queen Sithara, architect of the most recent expansion wave. "Your species is new to us," her mental voice said, and now Marcus could hear something almost like pleasure in it. "We discovered your world 3 cycles ago. Such a young race, barely beyond your own star system, and yet your neural patterns are fascinating." More images flooded Marcus's mind. He saw his own capture, saw himself unconscious in a scanning chamber while machines peeled back every layer of his psychology, his memories, his fears and hopes and dreams. They had mapped him completely, down to the last neuron. "We take the best specimens from each conquered species," Sithara continued, her hands still against his forehead. "Warriors, artists, thinkers. We preserve them, study them, Use them to improve our own genetic lines. You tested higher than any other human we have scanned. Your strategic thinking, your adaptability, your capacity to function under extreme stress, all exceptional. Marcus tried to pull away, but the chains held firm. So what, I'm some kind of prize to you? Yes, her honesty was brutal. And more. I have chosen you specifically. You will be mine, in every sense. Your genetic material will enhance my bloodline. Your knowledge will be extracted and preserved. And you will live in comfort as part of my collection. She finally removed her hand from his forehead, and the images stopped. Marcus gasped, his mind reeling. And if I refuse? Cythara's expression did not change, but Marcus felt something dark slide through the mental connection between them. Your world has been marked. In 6 of your months, the harvesting fleet will arrive at Earth. We will take what we need. Specimens like you, resources, genetic diversity. The rest will be sterilized to prevent future complications. The words hit Marcus like bullets. You're going to kill everyone. Not everyone. We will preserve several million of your species in various facilities across the Empire. Enough to prevent extinction. We are not wasteful. She said it like she was being generous. You're insane. We are the apex of evolution in this universe. Every species we encounter either joins the Empire or ceases to be relevant. Cythara leaned closer, her face inches from his. But I am offering you a choice, human. Accept your place at my side. Become my consort and genetic template, and I will spare a portion of your world. 10% of your population will remain on Earth, untouched, allowed to rebuild. Refuse, and Earth becomes a resource extraction site. Nothing more. Marcus stared into those alien eyes and saw no deception there. She believed every word she was saying. This was normal to her, just the way the universe worked. You expect me to betray my entire species to save a fraction of them? I expect you to be practical. 10% of humanity surviving is better than the alternative. Her mental voice softened slightly, taking on an almost seductive quality. And you would live in luxury beyond your imagination. You would be treated with honor, your needs met, your comfort assured. Many would envy such a position. Many would call it slavery. Call it what you wish. The choice is yours to make. Cythara straightened, towering over him again. I will give you time to consider, but not much time. Every day you delay, the harvesting fleet moves closer to your world. She turned and walked toward the doorway, her movements fluid and unnaturally graceful. Why me? Marcus called after her. You said you scanned thousands of humans. Why choose me specifically? Cythara paused at the threshold, looking back over her shoulder. For the first time, something that might have been emotion flickered across her alien features. Because when we scanned your mind, we found something we have never encountered in 47 civilizations. When faced with impossible odds, when given the choice between survival and principle, your psychological pattern indicated you would choose principle, every time, without fail. Her head tilted again. That fascinates me. In the Velkari Empire, survival is the only principle that matters. I wish to understand how a species that values abstract concepts over existence has survived at all. Then she was gone, and Marcus was alone with the breathing walls and the chains that read his pulse. He had 6 months to save Earth, and he was starting from a prison cell in an alien empire. Marcus Chen closed his eyes and began to plan. 3 days after his awakening, the chains released Marcus and deposited him in what the Valkyrie called a comfort suite. It was a cage, dressed up as luxury, and it fooled absolutely no one. The room was huge, larger than his entire salvage ship had been. The walls shifted colors, based on some algorithm he could not figure out, moving through shades of purple and blue. The furniture looked grown rather than built, all curves and organic shapes that adjusted themselves when he sat down. There was a window that showed stars streaming past, though Marcus suspected it was fake. A door materialized in one wall, and a small creature entered, barely 3 feet tall, covered in gray fur. Its eyes were large and sad. It carried a tray of food. "What are you?" Marcus asked, keeping his voice gentle. The creature flinched, but did not run. "Servant," it whispered in broken but understandable English. The translation device in the room was working. "Conquered 80 cycles ago. What happened to your people?" The creature set down the tray with shaking hands. "Most died, some serve. This is the way." It scurried out before Marcus could ask anything else. Over the next week, Marcus learned the shape of his prison. He was allowed to move through 3 rooms: the comfort suite, a bathing chamber that used some kind of sonic cleaning he did not trust, and a viewing room filled with screens showing information about the Valkyrie Empire. The screens were meant to educate him, to show him the glory of his captors. Instead, they showed him exactly what he was fighting against. The Valkyrie were old, far older than humanity. They had been conquering for so long that conquest was simply what they did, as natural as breathing. Their society was built on genetic castes, each person bred for a specific role: workers, warriors, scientists, rulers. No one questioned their place, because questioning was bred out of most of them. Queen Sithara was from the highest caste, the sovereign bloodline. There were only 12 others like her in the entire empire, each ruling a sector of space larger than human exploration had ever reached. Marcus watched footage of conquests and felt sick. The Valkyrie did not just take worlds, they erased cultures. Languages died, art was catalogued and filed away. People became specimens, sorted by genetic value, and distributed across the empire like products. On the 8th day, Sithara came to visit him. She entered without warning, and Marcus looked up from where he sat, studying a screen showing Earth's position relative to the fleet. She had changed since their first meeting. Wearing something that looked like a robe made of living light, it flowed around her like water. "You spend much time watching the screens," she said, her mental voice filling his head. "Learning about my enemy," Marcus replied. "I am not your enemy. I am offering you salvation." By asking me to betray everything I am, Marcus stood to face her properly. He would not cower, even though she was 1.5 feet taller. "That's not salvation. That's surrender." Sithara's head tilted in that curious gesture. "You make a distinction between the two. Interesting. In the Empire, they are the same concept. That explains a lot about your empire." For a moment, Marcus thought he had gone too far. Sithara's eyes narrowed, and he felt pressure in his mind, like she was considering crushing his thoughts. Then it passed, and something that might have been amusement flickered across her features. "You are either very brave or very foolish. Can't it be both?" "Perhaps." She moved to the window, looking out at the false stars. "I have a proposal. You claim to be unbreakable, that human principles matter more than survival. I wish to test this claim." "What kind of test?" Sithara gestured, and a holographic board appeared between them, floating in the air. It was covered in geometric shapes and symbols Marcus did not recognize. "We will play games, strategy games from across the empire. If you win, I will answer any question you ask truthfully. If I win, you will answer mine." Marcus studied the board. It looked complicated, but he had always been good at picking up new games. "And if I refuse? Then we sit in silence until you accept your fate. But I think you will not refuse. Humans are curious by nature. I have read your psychological profile thoroughly." She was right, and Marcus hated that she was right. "Fine. Teach me the rules." The game was called Kashari, and it was the most popular strategy game in the Valkyrie Empire. The rules were simple enough, moving pieces across a board to capture territory. But the strategy was deep. Thousands of years of refinement by a species that bred tactical geniuses. Marcus lost the first game in 12 moves. He lost the second game in 20. On the third game, he started to see the patterns. Valkyrie's strategy was elegant and efficient. Every move calculated for maximum effect with minimum waste. It was beautiful in its precision. It was also predictable. On the seventh game, Marcus won. Cythara stared at the board in silence for a long moment. How? You're too perfect, Marcus said. Every move you make is the optimal move according to thousands of years of strategy. But that means I can predict you. Once I learned the patterns, I just had to make moves that were suboptimal, moves that should not work, and your own perfection trapped you. The Queen's eyes focused on him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. You intentionally made inferior moves. Yeah, we call it thinking outside the box. Sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense. Marcus leaned back. I won, so I get to ask a question. Ask. Why do the Valkyrie conquer? What's the point of all this? Cythara was quiet for so long that Marcus thought she might refuse to answer. When she finally spoke, her mental voice was softer than he had ever heard it. Survival. We conquer because if we stop, we die. Our genetic lines are ancient, and they are failing. Each generation is weaker than the last, more prone to disease, less fertile. We need new genetic material constantly, from species different enough to revitalize our genome. Without conquest, without the constant influx of new DNA, the Valkyrie Empire will collapse within 10,000 cycles. Marcus felt his anger falter slightly. Not disappear, but shift. So you're desperate. We are pragmatic. We will not allow our species to die. If other species must be sacrificed for our survival, that is the price of existence. Have you ever considered asking instead of taking? Cythara's laugh was a cold thing in his mind. No species would willingly give us what we need. They would see it as surrender, as you do. Maybe you never asked the right way. They played 17 more games over the next 2 weeks. Marcus won 6 of them, always by doing something that made no strategic sense, something that violated the perfect logic of Valkyrie thinking. Each time he won, he asked questions. Each time Cythara won, she asked about humanity. He learned that the Valkyrie had no music, considered it a waste of resources. He learned that they had eliminated most emotions from their genetic code, considering them inefficient. He learned that Cythara herself had never chosen anything in her life. Every decision, from her birth to her current position, predetermined by genetic programming and social caste. She learned that humans created art with no purpose except beauty. She learned that humans had killed each other over ideas and concepts. She learned that Marcus had once risked his life to save a dog, an animal with no strategic value whatsoever. Your species is chaos incarnate, Cythara said, after hearing that story. You should not have survived to reach space. Everything about your evolution defies efficient design. And yet, here we are. Marcus moved a piece on the Kashari board, a move that sacrificed his strongest piece for no apparent gain. Maybe efficiency isn't everything. Cythara studied the board and realized too late that his sacrifice had been a trap. She had lost again. Another question, Marcus said. Do you actually want me, Cythara? Or is this just about genetics and conquest? The Queen's face showed something Marcus had never seen before. Uncertainty. I do not know, she admitted. Want is not a concept I was bred to understand. But when I interfaced with your mind during your scanning, I felt something. Your thoughts are so different from mine, so chaotic and unpredictable. It was like hearing music for the first time, though I had no context for what music was. She stood abruptly, I have spent too long here. The fleet moves closer to your world with each passing day. You should accept my offer before time runs out." "Not yet," Marcus said. "We still have games to play." After she left, Marcus sat alone in his gilded cage and thought about what he had learned. The Velkari were not evil, not really. They were a species doing what they thought they had to do to survive. But that did not make what they were doing to Earth right. It just made stopping them a lot more complicated. Marcus looked at the Kashari board, still showing his last victory. He had won by being unpredictable, by breaking the rules in ways the Velkari could not anticipate. If he was going to save Earth, he would have to do the same thing on a much larger scale. He would have to teach an entire empire how to think like a human. And somehow, he would have to do it before the harvesting fleet arrived. The collar appeared around Marcus's neck on the morning of his 23rd day in captivity. He woke to find it there, a thin band of silver metal that hummed quietly against his skin. When Cythara arrived later that day, Marcus pointed at it. "What's this?" "Freedom," she said, "of a sort. You have earned a degree of trust. The collar will track your location and prevent you from entering restricted areas, but you may now move freely through the ship." Marcus touched the metal. It was warm, almost body temperature. "Why?" "Because I wish to see what you will do with freedom, and because keeping you confined is clearly not breaking your spirit." Her mental voice carried something that might have been respect. "You are not like the others we have collected. Perhaps seeing the ship will help you understand the futility of resistance." She was wrong about that, but Marcus was not going to correct her. The ship was called the Throne of Ascending Night, and it was beyond anything Marcus had imagined. It was not just a ship, but a flying city, housing millions of Velkari and an equal number of servant species. The corridors stretched for miles, some of them open to artificial skies, where flying creatures transported goods and people. Marcus walked through markets, where slaves sold products from 100 dead civilizations. He saw factories, where biological machines grew ships and weapons. He passed temples, where the Velkari worshipped something called the genetic divine, the concept that perfect DNA was the only true God. And everywhere, he saw the conquered. The small gray creature that had brought him food was from a species called the Kethis. There were thousands of them on the ship, all servants, all broken. Marcus tried talking to several, but they flinched away from him. One old Kethis finally whispered, "Do not speak to us, human. Friendship with new specimens only brings pain when they are broken too." In a quiet corner of the ship's lower levels, Marcus found something unexpected. A garden, hidden away where few seemed to visit. And in the garden, he found others like him. There were 5 of them, specimens from different conquered species, each one wearing a collar like his. A tall, thin being with too many arms introduced itself as Vekesh, from a world the Velkari had harvested 40 cycles ago. It had been a mathematician before its capture. "You are human," Vekesh said, its voice musical despite the translator. "We heard rumors of a new species. You are the first specimen to be given freedom of movement in many cycles." "Why?" Marcus asked. A creature that looked like a living crystal formation answered. Its name was unpronounceable, but it told Marcus to call it Prism. "Because you are special. Queen Cythara has claimed you personally. That has not happened in living memory." Over the following weeks, Marcus returned to the garden regularly. He learned the stories of the conquered. Vikesh's people had been scientists and artists, their civilization built on mathematics and music. The Velkari had taken their greatest minds and left the rest to die of an engineered plague. Prism's species had been living computers, their crystal bodies capable of processing data at speeds that made human computers look like stone tools. The Velkari had shattered their world to harvest the crystals, caring nothing for the fact that each crystal was a living, thinking being. There were others, a being made of living electricity named Spark, a creature that looked like a mobile plant called Verdant. Each had a story of loss and conquest. "Why do you all stay in this garden?" Marcus asked one day. "Because it is the one place on the ship that still feels like home," Verdant said, its leafy appendages rustling. "The Velkari do not understand gardens, do not see the point of growing plants that serve no function, so they ignore this place. It is our sanctuary." Marcus looked at the garden with new eyes. It was small, poorly maintained, full of plants from dead worlds, but it was also an act of resistance, a way for the conquered to remember who they had been. "Has anyone ever escaped?" he asked. The others looked at each other. Finally, Vikesh spoke. "No. The Velkari are too powerful, their systems too perfect. Escape is not possible." "What about rebellion?" "Also impossible. The Velkari breed their servant castes for obedience. Those like us, the special specimens, we are too few and too scattered. There is no way to coordinate, no way to fight back against an empire of billions." Marcus thought about the Kashari Games, about how he had won by being unpredictable. "What if we did not fight the way they expect?" Prism's crystal body chimed softly. "Explain." "The Velkari are perfect strategists, but they cannot handle chaos. They think in terms of efficiency and optimal solutions. What if we introduced variables they cannot predict?" "You are talking about warfare," Spark said, its electrical form crackling. "We are scientists and artists, not soldiers." "Some of the best resistance movements in human history were started by scientists and artists," Marcus replied, "because they understood that war is not just about weapons, it is about ideas." He told them about human history, about how small groups of determined people had toppled empires by making the cost of occupation higher than the value of conquest, about how non-violent resistance had brought down governments, about how cultural preservation had kept conquered peoples alive through centuries of occupation. "You are proposing we teach other conquered species to resist," Vikesh said slowly, "to spread ideas like a virus through the ship's population." "Exactly. The Velkari think they have perfected control, but control is fragile. It only takes a few cracks to bring down the whole structure." They talked long into the night cycle, planning in whispers. It would be slow work, careful work. They would teach the servant castes small acts of disobedience, deliberately misunderstand orders, work slowly, make mistakes that seemed accidental but added up over time. The Velkari had optimized their systems to the point where even small inefficiencies would cascade into larger problems. Marcus's visits with Sithara continued as well. She came to his quarters every few days, sometimes to play Kashari, sometimes just to talk. She was fascinated by human culture in a way that seemed almost hungry. "Tell me about music again," she said one evening. Marcus pulled up a file on his datapad, one of the few personal items he had been allowed to keep. "What kind?" he asked. "You choose." He played her jazz, Miles Davis improvising on a trumpet. Sithara listened with her eyes closed, her face showing more emotion than he had ever seen. "It has no pattern," she whispered. "No structure I can predict. How does your species find this pleasant?" "Because life has no pattern either. Jazz is about finding beauty in chaos, about creating something new in the moment. Every performance is different." "This should not work. It violates every principle of efficient design." "Yeah," Marcus smiled. "That's kind of the point." Sithara opened her eyes and looked at him. "I have been thinking about what you said, about asking instead of taking. I consulted the historical records. In 47 conquests, the Velkari have never attempted diplomatic genetic exchange. Why not? Because we assumed no species would agree, and because our culture does not understand the concept of mutually beneficial exchange. In the Empire, every interaction has a superior and an inferior party. That's a lonely way to live." Something flickered across Sithara's face. For a moment, She looked almost human in her expression. Yes, it is. She reached out and touched his face, her long fingers gentle, despite their alien shape. You are changing me, Marcus Chen. I find myself questioning doctrines that have stood for millions of cycles. This troubles me. Questions are how progress starts, or how empires fall. But she did not move her hand away. That night, Marcus lay awake thinking about the strange position he was in. He was a prisoner planning rebellion, while his captor slowly fell for him. Cythara was beginning to see him as more than a specimen, and he was beginning to see her as more than a monster. She was a product of her culture, doing what she had been bred and trained to do. But she was also capable of change, capable of growth. Marcus wondered if an empire could change the same way. In the garden the next day, he found Vikesh waiting with news. The small resistances are working. Efficiency in the lower decks has dropped by 3%. The Velkari supervisors are confused. They cannot identify a cause because there is no single cause, just 1,000 tiny acts of defiance. Good, Marcus said. Keep it subtle. If they catch on too early, they will crack down hard. There is something else, Prism chimed. We have been monitoring communications. The harvesting fleet is 4 months from Earth now. And there is dissent among the Velkari command staff. Some believe the conquest is proceeding too slowly. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Meaning they may accelerate the timeline. Earth may have less time than we thought. Marcus looked up at the artificial sky of the ship and thought of home. 4 months, maybe less. He had to work faster. That night, he asked Cythara a question that had been burning in his mind. If you could change the empire, if you had the power to rewrite everything, would you? She was silent for a long time. When she finally answered, her mental voice was barely a whisper. I do not know if I am brave enough to try. Then maybe, Marcus said gently, you need to learn from humans how to be brave. Marcus found a quantum communication array by accident, 3 months into his captivity. He had been exploring a section of the ship that his collar marked as restricted but not forbidden, a gray area in the Velkari's otherwise perfect systems. The chamber was deep in the ship's core, surrounded by biological processors that hummed with activity. The array itself was beautiful in an alien way, a sphere of crystallized light floating in the center of the room, sending messages across the galaxy at speeds that made human FTL communication look primitive. And it was completely unguarded. The Velkari's fatal flaw was their inability to imagine resistance from within. They had guards and weapons to prevent external threats. But the idea that a specimen might sabotage their systems never occurred to them. Specimens were controlled, predictable, broken. Marcus was none of those things. He spent 2 weeks studying the array from a distance, watching the technicians who maintained it, learning the patterns of when the chamber was empty. The Velkari worked in shifts that followed a rhythm so precise you could set a watch by it. On the 15th day, Marcus entered during a shift change and had 12 minutes alone with the array. He could not send a direct message. The Velkari would detect that instantly. But humans had been hiding messages in plain sight for thousands of years. Steganography, the art of concealment, was as old as writing itself. Marcus accessed the array's output logs and found the regular astronomical data the ship sent back to the Empire. Stellar positions, gravity measurements, radiation readings, boring, routine data that no one examined closely. He began to alter the data in tiny, specific ways. A star's position shifted by 0.0001 degrees. A radiation reading changed by a fraction of a percent. To anyone looking at the raw numbers, it would seem like measurement noise, the natural variations that occurred in any data collection. But to someone who knew what to look for, someone who understood human cultural references, and obsolete Earth encryption methods, it was a message. Marcus encoded everything. The Valkyries' weaknesses, the composition of the harvesting fleet, the timeline for Earth's invasion, and most importantly, proof that the Valkyrie Empire, for all its power, could be beaten by unpredictability and chaos. He hid it all in the noise and prayed that Earth's monitoring stations would be scanning the right frequencies, that someone would notice the patterns, that humanity would have time to prepare. When he finished, he erased all traces of his presence and left the chamber. His collar had logged his location, but there was nothing suspicious about a specimen wandering restricted areas. He was Sithara's personal claim. He had privileges. He hoped it would be enough. The rebellion in the ship was growing, though most of the Valkyrie had not noticed yet. The conquered species were learning from each other, teaching small acts of resistance that spread through the servant population like whispers. A Kethis janitor would clean a corridor in the raw mortar, disrupting the Valkyrie's perfect traffic flow. A crystalline calculator would introduce rounding errors into accounting, just enough to throw off supply predictions. A plant-based maintenance worker would accidentally introduce foreign spores into the air filtration, causing sneezing fits among the Valkyrie. Each act was tiny, meaningless on its own. Together they were making the ship sick. Efficiency dropped to 92%. Then, 90%. The Valkyrie administrators began investigations, searching for a technical fault or a failing system. They never considered that the fault was biological, that the beings they had enslaved were fighting back. In the garden, the resistance met in secret. Marcus taught them everything he knew about asymmetric warfare, about how the weak could defeat the strong through persistence and creativity. The key is never to give them a single target, he explained to the group. They are bred to solve problems efficiently. Give them 100 tiny problems instead of one big one, and their whole decision-making process breaks down. Vikesh's many arms gestured in agreement. We have introduced errors into the navigation systems. Nothing that would endanger the ship, but enough to require constant manual corrections. The navigators are exhausted. Prism chimed softly. And I have been teaching the crystalline workers to slow their processing speeds. The Valkyrie think it is a natural degradation of our biology. They do not realize we are doing it deliberately. Spark crackled. The question is how long we can maintain this before they realize the truth. Long enough, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. We just need to create enough chaos that when the moment comes, they won't be able to respond effectively. What moment? Verdant asked. Marcus hesitated. He had not told the others about the message he sent to Earth. If the Valkyrie discovered it, anyone who knew could be tortured for information. It was safer if he carried the secret alone. I'm working on something, he said. Trust me. That night Sithara came to him agitated. Her usual calm was fractured, her movements sharp and nervous. The High Command is displeased, she said without preamble. Ship efficiency has dropped to unacceptable levels. They blame my leadership. Marcus kept his face neutral. What will they do? They have ordered a purge. All non-essential specimens are to be terminated. The servant population will be reduced by 40% and replaced with fresh stock from recent conquests. Her mental voice carried an emotion Marcus had never heard from her before. Fear. This includes your friends in the garden. Marcus felt his heart stop. No. I have no choice. The order comes from the Grand Matriarch herself. If I refuse, I will be removed from command and replaced. You will be taken from me and given to another sovereign. Earth's fate will be sealed. There's always a choice, Sithara. She turned on him, her alien features twisted in anguish. You do not understand. I am not like you. I cannot simply choose to disobey. I am bred for obedience to the hierarchy. Every instinct I have tells me to comply. Then fight your instincts. Marcus stepped closer to her. You've been questioning your programming. This is what it comes down to. Are you going to be what they made you, or are you going to choose who you want to be? Sithara's hands trembled. If I defy them, it will mean civil war. The empire will fracture. Maybe it should. Maybe an empire built on conquest and slavery deserves to fall. And what would replace it? Something better. Something built on cooperation instead of domination. Marcus took her hand, feeling how cold her alien skin was. You told me the Valkyrie are dying, that you need genetic diversity to survive. But you're going about it all wrong. You're taking what you need and making enemies. What if you asked? What if you built alliances instead of conquests? No one would agree to help us. I would. The words surprised Marcus as much as they surprised Sithara. If you called off the Earth invasion, if you freed the conquered species and asked for help instead of demanding it, I would help you. I would convince Earth to share genetic material, to work with you on solving your species' problems. Sithara stared at him. You would do this? After everything we have done to you, to your friends, to the 47 civilizations we have destroyed? I would do it to save Earth. And because I've gotten to know you, Sithara, under all the conquest and the genetic programming, there's someone capable of being better. Someone who listens to jazz and asks questions and feels lonely. Marcus squeezed her hand. Help me save my friends. Help me save Earth. And I will help you save your species. She pulled away from him, pacing the room like a caged animal. Her mind was a storm he could feel even through the weak connection they shared. Duty warred with desire. Programming fought against genuine feeling. Finally, she stopped. There are others like me. Valkyrie who question the old ways. Scientists who have argued for peaceful genetic exchange. They are few, but they exist. If I move against the High Command, some will support me. Then you have your army. It will not be enough. The traditionalists control most of the fleet. Marcus smiled. They control the fleet, but we control the ship. Or at least, we're making it very difficult for them to control it. Understanding dawned in Sithara's eyes. The efficiency problems, the errors and delays, that was you. Not just me. All of us. Every conquered species working together. Marcus moved to the window, looking out at the false stars. You said the Valkyrie are the apex of evolution, that you're perfect. But perfection is brittle. We've been introducing chaos into your perfect systems for months, and your entire command structure is buckling under the strain. You have been planning a rebellion this entire time. I've been planning survival, for Earth, for my friends, for everyone the Valkyrie have conquered. He turned back to face her. The question is, are you going to try to stop me, or are you going to join me? Sithara was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her mental voice was steady and clear. I will need proof of good faith, from you and from Earth. Name it. Release all human specimens. Give them a ship. Let them return to Earth to warn your people and arrange the alliance. Marcus blinked. You would just let us go? I would release the humans as a demonstration that I am serious about change. They can carry your proposal to Earth. In exchange, you stay here and help me plan the crew against the High Command. A huge risk. But it was also the best chance Earth had. Agreed, Marcus said. But my friends in the garden come too. All the special specimens. They've earned their freedom. Sithara's expression was unreadable. You bargain for others before yourself. This continues to fascinate me. It's called caring about people. You should try it sometime. I am trying, she said softly. I am trying right now. The human transport ship launched from the throne of Ascending Night 3 weeks later, carrying 47 freed humans and messages for Earth. Marcus watched it disappear into the darkness of space and felt a weight settle on his shoulders. He had sent his people home, but he remained behind, a hostage to his own plan. Sithara stood beside him at the observation deck, her presence a constant reminder of how strange his situation had become. Enemy and ally, captor and partner. The lines had blurred so much, Marcus was not sure they existed anymore. "They will reach Earth in 2 months," Sithara said. "That gives us very little time. Then we better not waste it." The conspiracy began in whispers and grew into a movement. Sithara contacted the reformist Valkyrie, the scientists and philosophers who had quietly questioned the Empire's endless expansion. There were fewer than Marcus had hoped for, but more than Sithara had expected. 3,000 Valkyrie across the fleet, a tiny fraction of billions, but positioned in key locations. In the garden, Marcus met with the resistance. Vikesh, Prism, Spark, Verdant, and dozens of others who had joined their cause. They were still specimens, still wearing collars, but they were no longer broken. "The plan is simple," Marcus explained. "When Sithara makes her move against the High Command, we cause as much chaos as possible. Shut down life support in military sectors, lock command staff out of their own systems, make the ship so unstable that the traditionalists have to focus on survival instead of fighting back. This will kill many Valkyrie," Vikesh said quietly. "It will save many more," Marcus countered. "The alternative is letting the Empire continue its conquest. How many more species will die if we do nothing?" No one argued. Marcus spent his nights working with Sithara and her reformist scientists, developing something the Valkyrie had never created before, a proposal for peaceful cooperation. They called it the Accord of Mutual Survival. The Valkyrie would admit their genetic crisis openly. They would ask for help instead of taking it. In exchange, they would share their advanced technology, their vast knowledge, their resources. Species would join the Empire willingly, as equals, rather than subjects. It was revolutionary. It was also possibly insane. "The traditionalists will never accept this," one of Sithara's advisors said, an elderly Valkyrie scientist named Kethros. "They will see it as weakness. Then they will learn that cooperation is not weakness," Sithara replied. "It is evolution." The coup was scheduled for the day the harvesting fleet arrived at Earth's solar system. Sithara would confront the Grand Matriarch directly, presenting the accord and demanding the Empire change course. The reformists would seize control of key systems simultaneously. If everything went perfectly, they might succeed without major bloodshed. Marcus knew nothing ever went perfectly. 2 weeks before the scheduled coup, disaster struck. A Valkyrie security officer discovered evidence of the conspiracy. Not the full extent, but enough to raise alarms. The officer reported directly to the Grand Matriarch. The response was swift and brutal. Marcus was in his quarters when the ship's alarms began screaming. He ran to the window and saw Valkyrie soldiers flooding the corridors, hunting for rebels. Sithara appeared at his door, her face grim. "They know. The Matriarch has activated the purge protocols. All suspected rebels are to be executed immediately." "The garden," Marcus said. "My friends are in the garden." They ran together through chaos. The ship was tearing itself apart as reformists and traditionalists fought for control. Biological weapons filled the air in some sections, making it hard to breathe. In others, the walls themselves had turned hostile, growing spikes and poisonous thorns. The garden was under attack when they arrived. Valkyrie soldiers were trying to breach the entrance, while Vikesh and the others defended from inside using improvised weapons and hacked security systems. Marcus and Sithara fought their way through, the Queen using her authority and psionic powers to clear a path. They reached the garden just as the defenders were being overwhelmed. "Fall back," Marcus shouted. "Get to the lower maintenance tunnels." The resistance fled deeper into the ship, with soldiers pursuing. They lost 3 people in the retreat, Verdant and 2 others Marcus had not known well. Each loss hit him like a physical blow. They regrouped in a section of the ship so old and neglected that even the Valkyrie systems had limited information about it. Prism used its crystalline body to interface with the ancient technology, bringing dormant defenses online. "We are trapped," Vekesh said. "They will find us eventually." "Then we make our stand here," Marcus replied. "We hold out until Earth responds." Sithara was communicating mentally with her reformist allies across the ship. "The coup is failing. Most of my supporters have been captured or killed. Kethros died defending the science section." Marcus felt the weight of all his decisions crushing down on him. People were dying because he had convinced them to hope, to fight back. Then Prism chimed urgently. "I am detecting a massive energy spike. The Grand Matriarch is activating the ship's self-destruct protocols." Everyone went silent. "She would rather destroy the entire ship than lose control of it," Sithara whispered. "This is madness." "How long do we have?" Marcus asked. 30 minutes, maybe less." Marcus looked around at the faces surrounding him, alien faces that had become friends. Sithara, who had risked everything to change. Vekesh, who had found courage after decades of slavery. Prism and Spark, and all the others who had dared to hope. "Then we stop her," he said. "We stop the self-destruct, and we finish this." "The Matriarch will be in the command throne," Sithara said. "It is the most heavily defended location on the ship. We will never reach her in time." Marcus smiled. "We don't have to reach her. We just have to reach the power core." Understanding dawned in Sithara's eyes. "If we shut down the main power, all systems including the self-destruct will fail. But the core is at the ship's center, behind multiple security barriers. Which is why we're not going to the center." Marcus turned to Prism. "Can you access the ship's original construction blueprints, from before all the updates and modifications?" Prism's body hummed as it interfaced with the ancient systems. "Yes, the ship is millions of cycles old. Much of the original structure is still present, just hidden beneath newer construction." "Show me the old maintenance passages." What Prism revealed was a maze of forgotten tunnels, built by species the Valkyrie had conquered and absorbed so long ago that even their names were lost. The passages ran through the entire ship like veins, connecting systems that no longer existed. One of them led directly to the power core's maintenance access. They moved quickly, Marcus and Sithara leading, while the others provided rear guard. The passages were narrow and dark, built for beings smaller than either humans or Valkyrie. They had to crawl through some sections. Behind them, they could hear soldiers searching. Ahead, the power core hummed with contained fury. They emerged into the core chamber with 15 minutes remaining. The core itself was a miniature star, held in place by magnetic fields and Valkyrie biotechnology. It was beautiful and terrifying. "How do we shut it down without killing everyone on the ship?" Marcus asked. "We cannot," Sithara said. "Shutting down the core completely would mean life support fails across the entire ship. Millions would die." Marcus thought frantically. What if we don't shut it down? What if we just disrupt it enough to trigger safety protocols? The ship's systems would go into emergency mode and abort the self-destruct. That could work, but we would need to damage the containment fields without causing a breach. "Can you do that with your psionic abilities?" Sithara looked at the core, then at Marcus. "Perhaps, but it will require all my focus. I will not be able to defend myself." "Then I'll defend you." She started to argue, but stopped when she saw his expression. Instead, she touched his face gently. "If we survive this, remind me that I chose you not because of genetics or conquest, but because you make me want to be better than I was designed to be." "Deal." Sithara approached the core and placed her hands on the containment field. Her body began to glow with psionic energy as she interfaced directly with the ship's biological systems. Marcus stood guard at the entrance, armed with a weapon he had taken from a fallen soldier. The soldiers found them with 10 minutes remaining on the self-destruct timer. Marcus fought like his species had always fought, with desperation and creativity. He used the narrow entrance as a choke point, making the soldiers come at him one at a time. When his weapon ran out of ammunition, he used debris from the tunnel. When that ran out, he used his fists. He took wounds. A burn across his ribs from an energy weapon. A deep cut on his arm from a Valkyrie blade. But he held the line. Behind him, Cythara screamed. The containment field was fighting her, trying to maintain its integrity. She poured more power into the disruption, her body shaking with the effort. 5 minutes remaining. Marcus went down as 3 soldiers rushed him simultaneously. He felt ribs crack, tasted blood. One of the soldiers raised a weapon to finish him. Then Vikesh was there, its many arms a blur as it pulled Marcus to safety. Prism and Spark and the others from the garden had followed them, refusing to let them face this alone. They formed a defensive line at the tunnel entrance. 3 minutes. The containment field flickered. Cythara collapsed to her knees, blood flowing from her nose and ears, but she had done it. The core safety protocols engaged, emergency systems activated across the ship, and most importantly, the self-destruct sequence aborted with 1 minute and 37 seconds remaining. The ship went dark, except for emergency lighting. In the sudden silence, they could hear the soldiers retreating, called back by their commanders to deal with the crisis. Marcus crawled to Cythara's side. She was barely conscious, her alien features pale. "Did it work?" she whispered. "You saved everyone," Marcus told her. She managed a weak smile. "How very human of me." In the hours that followed, the ship descended into chaos. With the main power compromised and the command structure fractured, neither reformists nor traditionalists could claim victory. An uneasy ceasefire emerged from mutual exhaustion. And then Earth's response arrived. Marcus's message had been received. Humanity had decoded his hidden warning and had months to prepare. When the harvesting fleet arrived at Earth, they found something unexpected. Earth had allied with 3 other species the Valkyrie had recently conquered. Species still strong enough to fight back. Together, they had built a defensive network that, while not powerful enough to defeat the Valkyrie, made invasion too costly to be worth the effort. More importantly, Earth transmitted a response to the Accord of Mutual Survival. Humanity was willing to help the Valkyrie, to share genetic material and resources, but only if the Empire agreed to fundamental changes. No more conquest, no more slavery. Cooperation between equals, or nothing at all. The Grand Matriarch, weakened by the failed purge and facing rebellion on multiple fronts, had no choice. She accepted preliminary negotiations. 5 years later, Marcus stood on a station that orbited between Earth and the Valkyrie home system. The station was jointly built, a symbol of the fragile alliance between species. Cythara was beside him, no longer a queen, but an ambassador. The Valkyrie Empire had fractured as predicted. The traditionalists had fled to the galaxy's edge, continuing their conquests. But the reformists had created something new, the cooperative, an alliance of species working together for mutual survival. It was messy and complicated and full of conflicts. Different species had different ideas about governance and ethics. Arguments broke out constantly. It was also working. How many of the 47 conquered civilizations have joined the cooperative? Marcus asked. 32 so far. The others are still rebuilding. It will take time. Cythara looked out at the stars. Sometimes I wonder if we did the right thing. The Empire was stable, predictable. This new way is chaos. Marcus laughed. Now you're starting to sound human. A Valkyrie child, one of the first generation born without genetic programming for conquest, ran past them chasing a human child. They were playing some hybrid game that combined rules from both cultures. Perhaps that is not such a bad thing, Sithara said softly. Another Velkari fleet had been located, one still following the old ways. Earth and the Cooperative were sending a joint force, not to conquer, but to offer the same choice Marcus had once been given. Change or be left behind as the universe moved forward. Ready to save another empire? Marcus asked. Sithara took his hand, her alien fingers intertwining with his human ones. With you, I am ready for anything. They walked together toward the command center, two beings from different worlds who had learned that the strongest chains were not made of metal or genetic programming, but of choice and partnership. Behind them, the station hummed with life, 1,000 species working together in beautiful, chaotic harmony. And far away, on a small blue world, humanity looked to the stars with hope instead of fear, knowing that when the universe had demanded they kneel, they had taught it to stand together instead.